I'm Olivia Carter, 27 years old, an event manager in New York. My entire life has been about trying to make my father, Richard, proud, especially after my mother passed away. I was always the one by his side, taking care of him and looking after my younger sister, Emily. I thought, at the very least, love and devotion would be repaid with fairness, until the day of Emily's wedding. As the soft music faded, my father took the microphone, smiling gently, and then he said something that shattered my heart into pieces. All the property and the house will belong to Emily and Ryan. The guests burst into applause. I just stood there, frozen in the middle of the hall, swallowing back my tears. Why would the father I'd devoted my entire life to give everything away to the sister who had never sacrificed anything? And at that moment I swore they wouldn't take what rightfully belonged to me so easily. I still remember that moment, the day everything inside me shattered. The golden lights, the laughter, the clinking of glasses. Everything was perfect until my father stood up, took the microphone, and destroyed every illusion I had ever believed in. I, Olivia Carter, 27 years old, the one who spent her entire youth caring for her family, stood there in the middle of my sister Emily's wedding. Everyone looked at me with affectionate eyes, thinking I was the supportive, selfless sister who always stood behind Emily. But only I knew inside me was an emptiness no one could ever understand. My father, Richard Carter, used to be the person I admired the most. He became a widower early, and since I was 17, I'd been his right hand. I cooked, took him to his medical appointments, paid off the bank loans after his business collapsed. Meanwhile, Emily, she only knew how to shop, party, and post pictures of her perfect life online. Still, I never felt jealous. I told myself, it's family, everyone has their role. Until the moment he opened his mouth and said those words. Your mother and I always dreamed of a day like this. And to show my love for Emily, I'd like to announce that the entire house, along with the remaining family assets, will be transferred to Emily and her husband, Ryan. Applause thundered through the room. People cheered and congratulated them. I froze, my hands stiff, the wine glass trembling. I tried to smile, but my throat tightened. Every sound in that hall blurred as if fading into another world. I looked at Emily. She was hugging my father, tears glistening, pretending to be touched. But in her eyes, I saw it triumph. She'd known all along. And that realization made me want to scream. I left the table and stepped out into the lobby. The cold air slapped my face. I needed to breathe, to escape the pitying looks surrounding me. A friend, Sarah, followed me and asked softly, "You okay, Liv?" I forced a smile. "I'm fine." But inside, a storm was raging. I looked up at the night sky and wondered, why me? I was the one who stood by my father when he collapsed after Mom's death. I was the one who worked 14-hour days to pay off his debts. I was the one who carried all the responsibilities he and Emily should have shared. And now, because of one glamorous wedding, he erased all my efforts with a single sentence. I returned to the hall, trying to stay composed. I didn't want to ruin Emily's big day. But as I passed Ryan's table, I overheard him whisper to a friend, "The house is ours now. Perfect plan." Plan? I stopped cold. My heart pounded. Had they planned this all along? I looked around. No one noticed. Everyone was laughing, celebrating. Only I stood there, invisible in a party I was never truly part of. And then, a wild but crystal clear thought flashed in my mind. If they dare take everything from me, I'll take it all back in ways they'll never see coming. Ew. I returned to my seat with a cold smile. Emily came over, hugging me tightly. "You're happy for me, right, sis?" I smiled back. "Of course. You deserve everything." But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The ceremony ended with lively music and laughter, but in my head, one sentence kept echoing. "All the property will belong to Emily and Ryan, Gind." That sentence was like a knife, and I knew the wound it left would never heal, not until I made them feel the same pain they'd inflicted on me. If you've ever been betrayed by the ones you love the most, listen to my story. And don't forget to subscribe, because the real secrets are only just beginning. I went home in silence after the wedding. The sound of my heels echoed coldly against the tiles of a house that once felt warm, the same house I'd stayed up countless nights cleaning, repainting, and repairing, now soon to bear someone else's name. I sat on the sofa, looking around. Everything was still the same: Mom's framed photo, the vase on the table, the old blanket she knitted years ago. But somehow, none of it felt like mine anymore. In my head, my father's words kept replaying. This house will belong to Emily and Ryan. And I used to believe that if I sacrificed enough, my father would see it. But I was wrong. Love and loyalty were never enough to earn a place in this family. I remembered my childhood when Mom was still alive. She used to say, "Olivia, you're the strongest one in the family. Take care of your father and sister. Okay?" And I did. I turned down a scholarship to California so I could stay in New York after Mom died. I worked 2 jobs so Dad wouldn't have to sell the house. I even helped Emily pay off her credit card debt just so she wouldn't ruin her credit score. And now, they were the ones pushing me out of their lives as if I had never existed. That night, I cried. For the first time in years, I cried like a child. But between the sobs, another feeling began to rise. Not despair, but clarity. I started remembering odd details from the weeks leading up to the wedding. Dad avoiding my questions about his finances. Emily suddenly acting kind, asking if I needed help preparing for the party. Ryan visiting our home multiple times, claiming he was helping Dad with paperwork before the wedding. Now it all made sense. They'd planned everything. The next day, I went to work, but my mind was elsewhere. Every time the phone rang, my heart skipped a beat. I was terrified it would be the call telling me the transfer was finalized. That afternoon, I went home early. When I opened the door, Emily was already there sitting on the sofa, sipping wine, as if the house was already hers. She smiled. "You're home. I just spoke with Dad's lawyer. He's signing the transfer papers soon." I looked at her, struggling to keep my anger contained. "Don't you think it's a little soon? Mom hasn't even been gone that long, and you're already claiming everything?" Emily shrugged, her smile cold. "You always talk about fairness, sis. But fairness is decided by whoever has the power. And right now, that's Dad." Her words struck me like ice. In her eyes, there was no sisterly affection, only arrogance and contempt. I turned to leave, but before going upstairs, I looked back at her and said slowly, "You think you've won, Emily? Believe me, this game isn't over." That night, I barely slept. I sat in my room, rummaging through Mom's old files. Buried under years of dust, I found a thick envelope sealed with wax. On the front, written in Mom's handwriting, "For Olivia, open when you turn 25. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a will. Mom had left the house to me clearly, legally, and never revoked. My heart pounded. Tears filled my eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from a fierce mix of hope and fury. I looked out the window. The streetlight's reflection on the glass shimmered like the last flicker of light in the dark. They chose to betray me, so now I'll show them what justice truly means. A strange smile crossed my face, one I barely recognized. No more weakness, no more sorrow. Only one truth remained. This was just the beginning. Do you think Olivia will forgive them, or will she seek revenge? I spent the whole night reading my mother's will again. Her familiar, gentle handwriting felt like her voice echoing from the past. "This house will belong to Olivia when you turn 25, because I know only you truly understand the value of a home." I traced each word with my finger, my heart a tangle of emotions: faith, love, and anger. Mom trusted me, but Dad, the man who promised to honor her wishes, had betrayed her. He had forgotten his promise to the woman who loved him above all. The next morning, I made coffee and watched my father from across the room. He was on the phone in the living room. His voice was low, but I caught a few words. "Sell the house. Sign early. Ryan will handle it." I put my cup down. My heart raced. After he left the house, I went into his study. Everything was neat and orderly except one locked drawer. I knew he kept important papers there. After a few minutes of searching, I found a small key hidden inside the Bible. Inside the drawer, along with the transfer contracts, I found a legal file bearing the name Ryan Miller. When I opened it, I froze. Ryan had previously been sued for financial fraud, but the case had been quietly settled. My father surely didn't know, or worse, he knew and still trusted him. I skimmed through the documents and found printed emails between Ryan and my father. One passage sent chills down my spine. "Ryan, I'll help you sell the house quickly. The money will be invested in my new company and Emily's. Don't worry, everything will be fine. Dad, I trust you. I just want Emily to have a stable future. Olivia, she's strong enough to take care of herself. Strong enough to take care of herself. Those words cut through me like a knife. I'd always been strong, but since when did that strength become a reason for them to take everything from me? That evening, I confronted my father. He was sitting on the sofa watching the news. I forced myself to stay calm. Dad, I want to ask about the house. I heard you plan to sell it? He looked up, a little surprised, then sighed. Where did you hear that? It's no longer your concern, Olivia. You have a job, your own life. But this is Mom's house. She said it would belong to me. He frowned. Your mother said a lot of things. Emily is getting married. She needs a fresh start. You have enough. I stared at him for a long time. The way he spoke about me, cold and indifferent, made me feel like an outsider. So you're choosing Emily, not out of love, but because you believe Ryan will provide for the family? Ryan is a decent man. He has a clear plan, unlike you. You only know how to work. You don't think ahead. Do you know he was sued for fraud? He froze. I threw the file onto the table, papers scattered everywhere. He bent down, eyes wide when he saw Ryan's name. Where did you get this? From your drawer. You've been deceived. And if you keep trusting him, you'll lose everything. The air in the room grew thick. He said nothing, only looked at me with a mixture of fear and shame. That night I overheard him on the phone, probably calling Ryan. His voice trembled. We need to talk. I want to review the contract. Then he yelled, You lied to me? The door slammed shut. I stood outside holding my mother's will. I knew, from that moment, everything would change. 2 days later, Emily stormed into the house, furious. What did you say to Dad? Ryan says Dad wants to cancel the contract. You should ask Ryan. Maybe you don't know everything about your future husband. Emily narrowed her eyes. You're always jealous. Dad loves me more. You just can't accept it, can you? I laughed an empty, emotionless laugh. No, Emily. I'm not jealous. I just want you to see who is really deceiving you. She stomped out, slamming the door hard. The sound echoed through the house like a warning. I watched her go, then returned to Dad's desk. He sat there, hair disheveled, eyes full of regret. For the first time, he said softly, Maybe I was wrong about Ryan, and about you. I didn't answer. I looked toward the window where the city lights reflected on the glass and whispered to myself, The truth is only beginning to come to light. And the price of betrayal will not come cheaply. Chat GPT Darnoy. If it were you discovering your father and sister colluding with a liar to seize your property, would you forgive or would you retaliate? Leave a comment below. I want to know what you would choose. After the truth about Ryan came out, the house fell into a heavy silence. My father barely spoke to anyone, sitting for hours in front of Mom's photograph. Emily vanished. She didn't come home for 2 days. But I knew the storm was only beginning. I spent the evening organizing the documents I'd found. Mom's will, Ryan's criminal file, and the printed emails exchanged between him and Dad. On the table, each paper fit together like fragments, forming a complete picture of betrayal. They want to take my house? I told myself, my voice low and cold. Fine, I'll let them destroy each other with their own hands. I began to plan my counterattack. Not with violence, not with rage, but with the truth, the one thing they feared most. Step 1 was to bring Dad back to reality. I reprinted all the evidence, sealed it in an envelope, and placed it on the dining table where he always Saturday, no note, just what he needed to see. That night, when he opened the envelope, I watched silently from the kitchen, peeking through the crack in the door. His eyes slowly scanned the papers and stopped at Mom's will. When he read the line, "This house will belong to Olivia," his hands trembled. A tear fell onto the page. I hadn't seen him cry since Mom died. He called me, voice hoarse. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I looked him in the eye. Because I wanted you to see the truth for yourself. You trusted outsiders too much and forgot who has always stood by you. He bowed his head and said nothing more. Perhaps for the first time in years, he felt the pain I'd swallowed. Step 2. I needed to expose Emily and Ryan to the public. I knew they were planning to launch a new company and hold a lavish launch event to attract investors. I had proof that Ryan had committed financial fraud. All it would take was a small push, and they'd both fall. I contacted Sarah, a journalist friend I trusted, and sent her the entire dossier with one condition. Don't publish my name. I don't want them to know who's behind this. Sarah understood immediately. She promised to break the story as a hot scoop. Businessman Ryan Miller, previously tied to financial scandal, preparing to open a company with his fiancée Emily Carter, daughter of entrepreneur Richard Carter. Within days, the story spread across the networks. The press swarmed. Investors pulled out. Ryan called my father in a panic, but Dad didn't pick up. That evening, Emily returned home, pale and red-eyed. "Was it you?" she screamed. I replied calmly, "Do you think I have the power to set the media ablaze in one day? Don't pretend, Olivia. You want to ruin me." "No, Emily." I stepped closer, my voice low. "I'm not destroying you. You and Ryan did that yourselves." She burst into tears. I turned my back and walked away. There was no joy inside me, only emptiness. But in that silence, I felt justice begin to tilt in my favor. That night, I sat on the porch, listening to the rain. My father came out with a cup of hot tea and sat beside me. He was quiet for a long time, then whispered, "Your mother would be so proud of you." I looked at him, softer now. "I don't want revenge, Dad. I just want people to understand. Fairness cannot be bought with money." He nodded, staring into the distance. "I know." I squeezed Mom's will in my hand and gave a small smile. The night sky was still, but I knew this wasn't the end. There was one person who hadn't yet paid the price he deserved, Ryan. I prepared everything as if I were staging a play when I had to win with reason, not emotion. Over the past few days, the media had torn Ryan's plans apart. Investors had withdrawn. Ryan was panicking, but I knew he wouldn't crumble that easily. He would try to turn the tables, and Emily, ever the one who needed protecting, might still believe him to the very end. I needed a public confrontation, a place where every piece of evidence could be laid bare, and the light of truth would pierce through every lie. I invited a few relatives and several lawyers to the house, calling it a family dinner to settle inheritance, matters peacefully, a polite excuse to lower their guard. My father Richard arrived looking tired, but clearer than before. Emily came late, her eyes still swollen. Ryan didn't have the courage to show up in person, but he did call earlier just to threaten me before hanging up. When everyone was seated, I didn't raise my voice. I placed my mother's will in the center of the table, followed by each file, each printed email, and every bank receipt. The lawyer across from me scanned through the documents and nodded slightly. I could feel the balance of power shift in my favor. I looked at my father before speaking. His eyes, no longer as resolute as they had been on Emily's wedding day, flickered between guilt and worry. I didn't want to destroy him. I wanted him to face the truth he had once denied. "Dad," I began, calm but firm. Mom made it clear. "This is a notarized, will never revoked. Whatever other papers you have, they're all here now." I slid the will toward him, letting him touch the words written in Mom's own hand. Emily scoffed, trying to sound confident. "Olivia, you're being dramatic. Dad knows I need a fresh start. Selling the house makes sense." Her voice was sharp, but I saw fear in her eyes. People often posture the hardest when they're already breaking inside. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I turned on the projector. On the screen appeared the emails between Ryan and my father, followed by old court documents and concealed bank transfers. I presented every piece of evidence in order: promises, transactions, and their plan to sell the house. The guests fell silent. Even their breathing grew heavy. Ryan called again, but my father ignored him. I saw his name flashing on my phone screen, his voice shouting through the line, a desperate man watching his scheme collapse. Emily, who had been defiant at first, began to falter. "Dad, what's happening?" she asked, trembling. My father looked at her with eyes full of pain. "I was wrong," he said weakly. "I trusted a stranger and forgot your mother's words." Quote. The confession fell like a public verdict. The guests exchanged glances. Some sighed. Others murmured about legal consequences. I could feel the air itself shifting from resentment to justice. Emily broke down crying, but it wasn't remorse. It was the panic of being exposed. Dad, please, don't do this, she pleaded, clutching his hand. The sight stung not because I pitied her, but because I saw how money had corroded what once was love. I stepped forward, gently but firmly separating them. Tears can't erase proof, Emily. I rested my hand on the will, my tone soft yet unwavering. Mom wanted me to keep this house. She trusted that I'd protect it. If you truly want to make things right, Dad, this is your moment. My father cried not loudly, but with the weight of true regret. Richard was no longer the rigid man I'd known. He was just a broken father facing the cost of misplaced trust. He turned to Ryan's name with pain in his voice. Ryan, you took advantage of me. You'll have to face the consequences. Ryan appeared at the doorway, pale, trembling, but still trying to hold his ground. Mr. Carter, you don't understand. We can fix this, he stammered, freezing as the lawyers stood, dissecting every legal implication of the evidence. A tense debate erupted not with secrets, but with documents and facts. The climax came when Emily tried to shield Ryan, but my father, the same man I had blamed for years, stepped between them. His voice cut through the chaos. Emily, you need to stand on your own. Ryan is not the man your mother or I wanted for you. The words landed sharp and final, severing the last emotional tie. The confrontation didn't end in shouting or violence. It ended with evidence laid bare, a public apology from my father, and a firm legal resolution. All contracts frozen, transfers suspended, and the family lawyer ordered to uphold the will. Emily was stunned. Ryan left in disgrace. I didn't celebrate. I just stood there, watching them walk out of the living room. When the door closed, my father turned to me, voice trembling. You've endured so much. Your mother was right about you. I hugged him not out of triumph, but healing. The relationships would have to be rebuilt from the ground up. The wounds wouldn't close overnight. But at least today, truth had won. I looked around the room. Mom's will lay on the table, the soft light dimming above it like a quiet punctuation mark. I knew there would be trials ahead, scrutiny, and relationships that might never return to what they were. But I had finally stood up, not out of greed, but for the justice my mother entrusted to me. And in that moment, I understood. Restoring truth to your family might be the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it's the only way to truly live with yourself. After that night, the house fell into an eerie silence. No more arguments, no more tense phone calls, no more hurried footsteps from Emily or my father's rough voice trying to convince someone he was doing the right thing. There was only me, Olivia Carter, sitting in the living room before my mother's portrait. Everything felt as though a storm had just passed, and I was the only one left, standing drenched, exhausted, but unbroken. 3 days later, the lawyer confirmed it. My mother's will was completely valid, and every attempt to transfer the house had been voided. I was now the sole heir of the home, the very asset Ryan once called his first investment. When I signed the ownership papers, my hand trembled, not from joy, but from realization. Everything I had done, the pain, the tears, the defiance, all began from one simple desire: justice. Ryan vanished from the city. The media unearthed his past scandals. People said he left quietly, abandoning Emily to face the storm alone. She called me only once. Her voice was hoarse, tired. You won, Olivia. Are you happy now? I paused, then replied softly, No, Emily. I never wanted to win. I just wanted you to understand the cost of deceit. She sighed on the other end. I just wanted Dad to love me as much as he loved you. Her words stunned me. For a moment, all the bitterness in me dissolved. Beneath her jealousy, selfishness, and betrayal, she was still just a little sister who never felt loved enough. I said nothing. We stayed silent for a long time before she hung up. I knew some distances could never be bridged, but at least I no longer carried hatred. A few weeks later, my father decided to move in with an old friend in the countryside. He said he needed time to start over. The morning he left, I walked him to the door. He hugged me tightly, his voice rough and trembling. I'm sorry, Olivia. I didn't see you all those years. I smiled gently and held his hand. You don't need to apologize, Dad. Just live well this time for yourself. He nodded, eyes glistening. When he left, I watched him go, and for the first time, my heart felt light. That night, I began cleaning the house. Every photograph, every object carried a memory. I didn't want to sell it, nor change a thing. Every scratch, every corner, told a story, a reminder that I had walked through hell and survived. While dusting the shelves, I found a small wooden box. Inside was an old card from my mother, the ink nearly faded. If you ever feel alone, remember, justice may come late, but it always comes to those who never give up. I smiled through tears. Mom was right, justice came late, but it arrived exactly when I needed it most. From that moment, I stopped living blindly for work. I quit my event planning job and started a small project and organization to help women who'd been deprived of property or rights by their families. I didn't want anyone else to endure what I had. I used my own story to encourage them. I told them, sometimes betrayal is life's cruelest gift because it forces you to wake up and find yourself again. Many cried when they heard it, but I knew they didn't cry for me. They cried because they had once been me. One afternoon, as I watered the plants on the porch, a car stopped in front of the gate. Emily stepped out. She looked thinner, her hair cut short, her eyes softer, no longer filled with pride. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I nodded. We sat in the living room, the very place where everything had fallen apart. She looked around, voice trembling. "I know what I did was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I stayed silent for a while before replying. "I don't hate you, Emily. I just wish we hadn't wasted so much time hurting each other." Close quote. She nodded, tears streaming down. For the first time in years, I hugged my sister. Not because everything was fixed, but because I knew forgiveness was the only way to move forward. That night, I wrote in my journal, "I don't need money or victory. What I need is justice and peace within myself." My father has learned humility. Emily has learned the price of deceit. And I've learned how to let go without regret. I closed the notebook and looked out at the starry sky. The wind drifted through the window, carrying the faint scent of jasmine, Mom's favorite. I looked up and whispered, "Mom, I did it." Moonlight spilled across the window, touching her smiling portrait. And in that moment, I knew the story had finally ended. Not in revenge, but in release. The next morning, I opened the window and took a deep breath. The city was still noisy. Cars still rushed by, but inside me, there was only calm. I was no longer the fragile Olivia left behind at her sister's wedding. Now, I was Olivia Carter, the woman who rose from betrayal, reclaimed justice, and found herself again. And I finally understood one truth. Revenge might make you feel powerful, but only forgiveness can make you free.